I would like to welcome all of you to class today. I'm not in the classroom. We have a substitute, but hopefully her instructions along with this video and PowerPoint will help you navigate through today's lesson. Today we are going to work on two things for our academic notes. I want to spend some time explaining the difference between the three most commonly used documentation styles. So I need all of you to get out your yellow academic note papers. While you're doing that, for the majority of class today, you're going to work on peer review and getting your essays better to submit on Thursday. This slide is a good overview of the differences between the three most commonly used documentation styles. So you'll be able to look down each column and see what we do when we are documenting in MLA versus APA versus Chicago Manual. Somewhere in your academic notes, I think it would be a good idea to jot down Unit 1, Day 9, slide number 3, for a quick reference to differences, especially if you are taking another class where they are requiring you to document your paper in APA. As a quick overview, MLA is the most recent documentation style, and it's used mostly for undergraduate studies in colleges and universities, as well as high schools. APA is published academic work, and Chicago Turabian is published printed work. So doubtfully in your college experience will you get into Chicago Turabian. However, in your professional lives, a lot of you will experience that documentation style. So a quick overview between the two that you will mostly use in your educational classes. MLA is for work that you do that in the end is not published, whereas APA, it's the work that you do is actually published into scholarly journals. Now you will have a lot of teachers who will say, I want you to work on your essay in APA style. They've either become familiar and confident with that style, and so they're passing it on to you. But technically, APA is if your essays or your work will be published in a scholarly journal. Here are the two organizations that run MLA and APA. MLA stands for Modern Languages Association, and APA stands for American Psychological Association. Sometimes in your undergraduate work, teachers in different fields will have you do your assignments in APA. Most of your language arts classes will use MLA, the one in blue, your art classes as well, whereas classes in science often will ask you to write your papers in APA style. I know a few of you have actually come in for conferences who are working on essays for other classes already in APA style, so hopefully today's lesson will help you. One difference between these two styles is MLA does not use title pages. The information that normally goes on a title page is what you include in your heading. There are 4 lines as part of your heading along with the title of your work. And in APA style, that information is on its own title page. When you list your sources in the two styles, they are different as well. For MLA, you will title that page Works Cited. If you are typing a paper in APA, the title of that page is called References. When you document sources on a Works Cited page versus a reference page, you also include the author's names in a different way. In MLA, you use the full name. And in APA, it's the last name with the initials of the surnames. When you are writing or using capital letters or titles in APA versus APA style, those are different as well. You'll see in MLA, the titles are written in title case, which means almost all letters of the title are capitalized. Whereas in APA, you only title the first letter along with proper nouns. On this slide, it talks about how the in-text citations are different. So you've probably learned in your MLA practice that in the parentheses, after you use a source either quoted or paraphrased, you put the author's last name with the page number and no punctuation mark within that parentheses. Whereas in APA, there are actually three things you include: the author's last name, the year, and the page number. And you can see that they do use punctuation commas between each of those three elements. This is an important slide because it takes you to each of these three documentation style websites that will help you with specific questions you have in any form of internal in-text citation or works cited versus reference pages. So that's enough of those citations. Hopefully that taught you some differences, especially if you have a chance to work on a paper in APA style this year. All right, moving into our lesson today. In a perfect world, your teachers would give you feedback all the time on everything you write instantly, and that would work if there were one teacher, one student. A couple of years ago, I tried to figure out how much time in my life I have spent grading papers, and it scared me. So most years during the school year, I spend about 10 hours grading essays or students' work. And then if you times it by an average teaching career of 35 years, that ends up being the equivalent of 6 years of a teacher's life, which is not a pleasant thing to think about. So hopefully what teachers write on your papers you actually use and internalize in your writing. Of course, you don't have to do everything a teacher tells you to do with feedback, but that's a lot of time that is wasted if you never look over the comments that are written on your hard copies or refer to your notes like a Turnitin account where the teacher records comments electronically. So how do we improve or get feedback on our work? It's important to train you guys to give help to each other. A couple of years ago, on one of my students' reflection page on their ePortfolio, the student, a guy, he wrote, "By far the most helpful thing we did this semester was peer response. While I feel I got better at writing, more importantly, they helped me to understand the assignment better by seeing how someone else wrote the same assignment." That is so true. Think of peer response not merely as an exercise in editing other people's works, but a way for you to reinforce the decisions you made when you wrote your drafts, and also how they approached the assignment, and a way for you to think about what you would like to do before you turn in your final draft yourself, as well as giving valuable feedback to other students. I assume that this student had a really good peer review group to say something like that, because peer review time in classrooms are the best of times and the worst of times. They're the best of times if everyone buys in and comes to class prepared. They're not too productive if there are students who have only gotten the first paragraph written, or they choose to not put their heart and soul into giving you feedback, or being able to listen to constructive feedback with each other. So let's make your groups the best of times, and it really will help you to get a better final product before you submit it. How do we do that? I love Stephen King's short, pointed statement when he says, we write in public, but we edit. Sorry, we write in private, but we edit in public. So everything you have done up to this point is private writing with your observation essay. Now I want you to turn your work into a public platform and get feedback from each other. In class and on your own, there are 3 resources that you can use that I put on this slide to help you become better peer review participants, whether you are on the receiving or giving side. So watch one of these videos or more. Before I break you into groups, I want you guys to think, what is your job as a peer reviewer? It's not to give answers to them, it's not to say, this is what you have to do. Your job is to raise questions. Why did a student begin a certain way? Why did a student choose to use a particular voice? Why did a student include this idea in the middle of an essay? So you are looking at someone who's talking back to the author of the piece with questions and learning from them so that there's more of a dialogue going on rather than just writing things on paper and passing them back in a silent way. There's a lot more discussing. Remember, peer review is not an exercise in proofreading. One of the most valuable things you can do as a peer reviewer is put your pen down and actually read their work and then talk with them after. Here are some best practices of what works for peer review. Of course, they can be conducted in and out of class, in person or electronically. They can be done in pairs or in groups. Most researchers say that the best peer review group numbers are 3 to 4. That gives you a longer time to interact with each other, and yet enough different types of essays to read and learn from to help you as a writer as well. So review some of these things you can do in your peer review groups to get the most out of the time you spend on this activity. To construct and to lead you into what to do this first time, I'd like you to practice this SPARK method as a way to interact as you read in class. If I were in class today, I would be leaving this on the screen the whole time you are sharing with your classmates your essays. So let's just go over it briefly. Look at specific comments that you can make to your classmates about word choices they have made, phrases they use, sentences, or even complete ideas. Zero in on specific choices that the writer made and what you as a reader have noticed. Prescriptive. Offer some, like a medical prescription helps us solve a problem. Use your feedback as a prescriptive tool to help your writer with potential ideas that they could use to make their paper better. Action. This refers to what happens to you as you listen to someone giving you feedback. What are you going to do after you listen to the feedback? What can you do? So today in class, after you have spent time reviewing each other's work in peer review, if there is time, I want you to think of this action. Now what are you going to do after someone else has given you feedback on your work? You can reference specific assignments or parts of the essay that need work. And just to remember, when you're giving feedback to other people, you're dealing with human beings. You want to do that in a kind way. So I am running out of time. So in class, you're going to get into groups. Please read this slide. But finally, between now and the end of class, you will be uploading or working on your essay extensively before Thursday. Thank you.